So, let's break down the technique, the theoretical part. First of all, let's go over the nail preparation. Look at this nail here. It is completely clean, and here we don't have any remaining pterygium or cuticle. Everything must be very clean in this area, because if a piece of cuticle, dust, or anything gets trapped in this zone, you will get lifting here. That's why we prepare this area very carefully and remove all the pterygium. We also buff the entire nail, removing the lipid layer and lifting the keratin layers. We do not need to file down the top layer of the nail itself. We just need to remove the oily layer so the nail becomes completely matte, creating a slightly textured surface for better adhesion. That's our properly prepared nail. Next, very often this is what happens with the nail. These are the mistakes I see. Let's first look at what is done incorrectly. Very often I see nail artists placing a bead of gel right in this area and then dragging it down. And we end up with a nail that looks like this. This is a big mistake. What happens here? This part of the nail, let me take another color. This part of the nail is very flexible. In this area, we should only have the base layer right next to the cuticle, and the gel should be applied with a small distance from the cuticle and in a very thin layer. Because the nail here is flexible, the natural nail is soft and flexes as it grows, and this excess bulk of product simply lifts from the area near the cuticle and along the sidewalls. And it's unclear why we are reinforcing this zone at all. This area doesn't break, so there is no reason to reinforce it. This is a major mistake. This buildup of product near the cuticle is one of the main reasons lifting appears around the cuticle and in the side pockets. Now let's look at the free edge. The free edge is completely thin and not reinforced at all. When gel is applied in a thin layer, what happens? It becomes flexible or brittle, and here the free edge doesn't hold at all. This thin layer begins to chip away. Lifting appears here, and the nail breaks here because as the nail grows out, this zone becomes unreinforced. It moves forward as the nail grows, and we end up with a very thin apex here as well. So we need to completely change the strategy. We need to reinforce this zone and this zone, but we do not need to reinforce this zone. Here we should have a thin layer. That means the correct architecture should look like this. Here we have a thin layer of product. Here we have the stress zone right here. This is the area where we need to create the height. So the structure goes almost straight here, and then the rise begins and continues all the way to the tip. Then this part becomes reinforced. This part becomes reinforced, while here we have the minimum amount of product, and naturally we will no longer have lifting here. And we will not have lifting here either, because the free edge is properly reinforced. So how do we achieve the architecture we need? It's very simple. On the prepared nail, after applying and fully curing the base coat, we take gel and first reinforce the free edge with a thin bead. We apply the gel directly along the edge, about 1 millimeter in height. Then we flash cure it with a flashlight or cure it in the lamp, and we get a small rim. This is the thickness of our future nail. But don't worry, at the end it will become thin. It will look very natural. Then, using the same hard gel after curing or flash curing this part on the tip, we apply a very thin layer of gel to this zone. Be careful, look, I step back slightly. In this zone, we only have base applied. In this area, there is only base, about 1 millimeter from the cuticle, and here we already have gel. Without curing this slip layer, I pick up a bead of gel. Later I will show the full process in practice, how to pick up the bead and how to apply it, how much product to take and so on. For now, just focus on the principle of the technique so you understand what we are doing. We place the bead in this zone, right in the center of the nail. Keep in mind the arch. If we look at the nail from the free edge, the center of that arch will be right here, so the bead goes right in the center. Then we gently push it a little so it distributes here, and we pull it down toward the rim at the free edge. Naturally, we distribute the gel, spreading the bead slightly to the sides. As a result, we get this kind of gel structure, thin near the cuticle, a reinforced stress zone, and a reinforced free edge. But of course, we see thickness here. What do? We perform underfiling, removing the natural nail from underneath, like this. And this way, at the free edge, we see thinness. Essentially, the nail will look like this. You will see the inner arch from underneath, and the nail will be thin like this. This is the kind of nail we get, very thin and very natural. Let's remember the main principles. We need it thin at the cuticle and along the sidewalls because this is a very flexible zone. Here it must be thin, here we need reinforcement, here is where the reinforcement goes.